I was on a night shift when my husband, my sister, and my son were brought in, all unconscious. I ran to see them, but a doctor quietly stopped me. "You can't see them yet," he said. Trembling, I asked, "Why?" The doctor lowered his eyes and whispered, "The police will explain everything once they arrive. Chicago winter mornings are mercilessly cold." Emily Thompson sighed deeply as she punched her time card at the end of her shift. The final hours of the night shift had been particularly busy, with 3 CPR incidents and assisting in 1 emergency surgery. The hospital ward's nursing station was filled with early morning hustle and bustle. "Good work, Emily. We're so thankful you were here today," said Rachel Collins, the night shift head nurse, patting her shoulder lightly. Emily smiled back. Working at Chicago General Hospital for 10 years, she had become a trusted presence in the emergency department of this large medical center. "Thanks, Rachel. We managed to get through it somehow." In the locker room, Emily changed out of her nurse's uniform into a soft sweater and jeans, then checked her cell phone. There was a message from her husband, Michael, heading to work early this morning. "Could you take Ethan to school? Sarah was up late last night, so it might be better not to wake her. Love you." Emily responded to the message with a slight sense of unease. "Okay, take care. Love you too." Recently, Michael, who worked as a salesman in real estate, had been leaving home earlier and returning later than before. According to him, the market was booming, and he had new clients. Emily trusted her husband, but sometimes she got the impression he was hiding something. She got into her car and headed home. Snow began to fall, with tiny crystals landing on the windshield. Their house in the Chicago suburbs was a 2-story home they had purchased right after getting married 10 years ago. As Emily opened the door, she heard her son's voice from the quiet house. "Mom, welcome home." 12-year-old Ethan was eating breakfast at the kitchen table. In front of him was a bowl of cereal with milk, and he had spread out his school homework. Emily kissed him lightly on the head. "Good morning, Ethan. Finished your homework?" "Almost, but this math part is a little difficult." Emily sat next to her son, offering to help with his homework. Ethan was a bright, intelligent boy who excelled in science and history but struggled a bit with math. "Where's Dad?" Ethan asked. "He said he left early for work. Seems he has a new client." Ethan was about to say something but swallowed his words. Emily noticed but didn't press him. Her son seemed more contemplative lately. She thought it might be the beginning of adolescence. Is Aunt Sarah still sleeping? Looks like it. Dad's message said she was up late last night, so it's better to let her rest. Emily's sister, Sarah, had divorced 4 months ago and was temporarily staying with them. Her marriage had lasted just 3 years. She had made the decision after discovering her husband's infidelity. Emily wanted to give her sister time and space to start a new life, ready for school. "It's time for the bus," Emily said, looking at the clock. Ethan hurriedly stuffed his homework into his bag and put on his jacket. Emily handed him a sandwich for lunch. "Have a good day. Come straight home after school." "Okay, Mum. I might be a little late today because I'm studying math with my friend Mike. Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too. Link below, if you're curious." Emily hugged her son and watched him leave the house. After finishing some chores, she gently knocked on Sarah's door upstairs. When there was no answer, Emily opened the door slightly and peeked in. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made, and Sarah was nowhere to be seen. Emily frowned. It was unusual for her sister to go out so early in the morning. She started to contact her by phone, but stopped herself from sending a message. Sarah was an adult. She had the right to her own time. Emily dragged her tired body to bed. Sleep after the night shift was precious, but before falling asleep, she couldn't help thinking about her family. Something felt off lately, the subtly changed atmosphere in the family. Michael's return times, Sarah's strange behavior, Ethan's silence. Still, Emily reassured herself the family was fine. Everyone was just dealing with life changes in their own way. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be a new day. Everything would return to normal. 3 weeks later, Emily was having lunch in the hospital cafeteria. Her colleague Laura sat across from her, placing her coffee down and whispering, "Emily, are you all right? You look tired lately." Emily looked up and forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. Just busy." In reality, she was far from fine. The subtle changes in the family atmosphere were troubling her. Recently, her husband, Michael, carried his smartphone everywhere and always seemed apprehensive. He hastily checked the screen whenever a message arrived and quickly put it away when Emily approached. His explanation was that he was under pressure with ongoing deals with important clients. But Emily felt there was some other reason. Really, how are things at home? Is Sarah still living with you? Laura's question seemed to carry some implication. Yes, she still is. She seems to be trying to get her life back on track lately. Emily thought about her sister. Sarah had clearly changed recently. Previously, she had been unable to recover from the pain of divorce and often stayed in her room. But now, she spent time on makeup every morning, bought new clothes, and went out more frequently. When Emily asked, "Has something good happened?" Sarah deflected the conversation, saying, "I'm just trying to think positively about life." Emily looked into Laura's eyes. "Do you know something?" Laura shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "No, not really. I'm just concerned." Emily sensed that there was truth hidden in her friend's words, but didn't pursue it further. She remembered Ethan, her son, had changed too. After returning from school, he used to eat snacks in the kitchen while telling her about his day, but now he often silently retreated to his room. The previous evening, Emily had knocked on Ethan's door. "Ethan, dinner time." "I'm not hungry," came her son's voice from inside. Emily opened the door and entered Ethan's room. He was sitting on the bed, hugging his knees. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Ethan didn't look up and shrugged. "Nothing. Did something happen at school? Are you being bullied?" "No, it's just..." He stumbled over his words. "I don't understand grown-up business." Emily frowned at those words. "What do you mean?" Ethan fell silent and said in a small voice, "Nothing." Emily was brought back to reality by Laura's voice. "The doctors have noticed changes in you too. You're usually so careful. But yesterday, you almost made a mistake in a patient's records." Emily blushed. Indeed, yesterday she had lacked concentration. She had almost written medication for one patient in another patient's record. Fortunately, Dr. Harris, the chief physician, noticed her mistake and corrected it. "I'm sorry. I'll be more careful." Laura took her friend's hand. "Emily, if something's wrong, why not talk about it?" Emily took a deep breath, hesitating whether to confide her worries, but she didn't know what to say. She herself didn't yet understand the situation. "I'm really fine, just a bit tired." That night, Emily was preparing for her night shift. Michael had said he would be late from work, so she asked Sarah to handle Ethan's dinner. "Of course, sis, don't worry," Sarah answered cheerfully. Emily found her sister's behavior strange, so different from before. She, who had once seemed depressed, now appeared unusually bright. Meanwhile, her son and husband seemed to be dragging some dark shadow. Emily couldn't understand what was happening in her family. Arriving at the hospital, her colleague Rachel greeted her with a worried face. "Emily, do you have a moment?" They moved to a corner of the nursing station. Rachel looked around and began speaking in a low voice. "About your husband." Emily's heart raced. "Michael? What happened?" "Last Saturday, when I was at the mall, I saw him. The woman he was with, Sarah." Emily's voice trembled. Rachel looked surprised. "You knew?" "No, just." Emily was at a loss for words. She had sensed something before but didn't want to acknowledge it. Her husband and sister, it was too painful a betrayal. They seemed very intimate. Rachel chose her words carefully, holding hands and laughing. "If you didn't know, maybe I shouldn't have said anything." Emily leaned against the wall. All the pieces were starting to connect in her mind: Michael's late returns, Sarah's sudden change, and her son Ethan's words. "I don't understand grown-up business." "It's okay, Rachel. Thank you for telling me." During that night's shift, Emily's mind was in turmoil. She tried to focus on patient care, but her family situation occupied her thoughts. How should she handle this? Should she confront them directly or gather evidence? If her husband and sister were truly betraying her, her world would collapse. At 2:00 a.m., an emergency call rang out. "Code Blue, emergency treatment room. Code Blue, emergency treatment room." Emily rushed there. The emergency room was bustling with activity. Multiple medical staff moving busily, and new patients seemed to be arriving. 3 traffic accident victims, seriously injured, shouted a young resident. A car apparently hit a tree on the highway. Emily tried to focus on her role. However, at that moment, her cell phone rang. Normally she would ignore it, but feeling uneasy about a call so late at night, she checked her phone. "Miss S. Thompson?" A voice that sounded like a police officer. "Your husband, sister, and son have been in an accident. They're being transported to Chicago General Hospital now." Emily's world stopped. I'm there now. She hung up and walked to the emergency room on trembling legs. Emily's feet moved as if they weren't her own. She pushed open the doors to the emergency room. It was overflowing with medical staff, tense voices, and machine warning sounds intermingling. Where are they? Emily cried. Rachel rushed over to her and grabbed her arm. Emily, where is my family? Rachel's expression darkened. Resolutely, she led Emily to the back of the treatment room. There, 3 stretchers were lined up, bodies covered with white sheets, connected to IVs and monitoring devices. Emily approached, step by step, feeling intense trembling. On the first bed lay her husband, Michael. His face had lacerations, and his right arm was bent at an unnatural angle. On the next bed was her sister, Sarah. Her beautiful face was swollen, with a large wound on her forehead. And on the last bed lay her beloved son, Ethan. His small body looked defenseless, with a bandage wrapped around his head. All 3 were unconscious. Michael, Sarah, Ethan, Emily cried, trying to rush to them. But Dr. Harris, the chief physician, stood in her way and quietly stopped her. Emily, calm down. Your family. It's better not to see them now, Emily asked in a trembling voice. Why? How are they? Dr. Harris said with his head down. We'll explain everything when the police arrive. Blood rushed to Emily's head. Police? Why police? Isn't it just an accident? At that moment, the treatment room doors opened, and 2 uniformed police officers entered, one an older man, the other a young woman. Miss S. Thompson, I'm Detective Carter. This is my partner, Detective Kim, the older officer introduced himself. May we talk to you for a moment? Emily nodded slowly, still gazing at her family lying on the beds. Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulders and guided her to a quiet interview room. Dr. Harris and the 2 detectives followed. In the interview room, Detective Carter began speaking quietly. Miss S. Thompson, I'm very sorry to say this, but there are suspicious aspects to tonight's accident. According to witness statements, there was a heated argument in the car just before the accident. The car began to swerve and eventually crashed into a tree by the roadside. Emily tried to understand the words. An argument? Between whom? We don't know exactly, Kingshi. However, Detective Carter paused, as if choosing his words. Is there something you're hiding? Emily's heart pounded. Your husband's smartphone was found at the accident scene. The screen displayed a message. Detective Kim took out the smartphone from an evidence bag and showed it to Emily. There was no passcode on Michael's phone. The message app was open. With a message to Sarah tonight, let's tell Emily everything. We can't keep hiding it. Now that Ethan knows, it will only destroy his heart if we continue like this. Emily was speechless. Blood rushed to her head, and her ears rang. All the pieces connected her husband's late returns, her sister's changes, her son's behavior. Before her eyes, her family's secret was revealed. Michael and my sister, she choked on the words. Detective Carter quietly nodded. Our investigation shows that your husband and sister were having an intimate relationship, and it seems your son witnessed it. We believe they were trying to have a discussion tonight. Emily's world crumbled. Strength left her body, and she collapsed into a chair. The betrayal of her husband and sister, and the weight of the secret her innocent son had been carrying. Their condition, she finally managed to say. Dr. Harris stepped forward. They're all stable. However, there was impact to their brains, and they're currently in comas. Your son, in particular, had a strong impact to his head, so the next 24 hours are critical. Emily closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her cheeks. My son, he knew. To think he was carrying such a burden alone. Detective Kim quietly said, This was found in your son's backpack. She took out a folded piece of paper. Emily took it and opened it. It was a page from a diary, written in Ethan's childish handwriting. Today, I saw Dad and Aunt Sarah kissing in the kitchen. I don't know how to tell Mom. Dad asked me, This is grown-up business. Please don't tell Mom. But I hate lying. I hate to see Mum sad. What should I do? Emily clutched the paper to her chest and sobbed loudly. Her heart was torn worry for her loved ones and anger at their betrayal. Most painful of all was her son's suffering. A boy of just 12, forced to carry adult secrets. She couldn't bear it. Let me see them, Emily pleaded with tear-blurred eyes. Dr. Harris hesitated. Emily, would you be able to see their condition calmly? I'm a nurse, and they're my family, even if they betrayed me. Doctor. Harris nodded quietly and took Emily back to the treatment room. She first went to her son's bed. She took Ethan's small hand and gently squeezed it. "Mommy's here, Ethan. Please wake up." "Please," she whispered. "You were so brave, but you don't have to carry such a burden anymore." Next, she went to her sister's bed, the sister she had been close to since childhood, the sister who betrayed her. Emily's heart was filled with conflicting emotions. "Why, Sarah? We were sisters," she said quietly. Finally, she stood at her husband Michael's bed. 10 years of marriage, memories with him, and now the revealed betrayal. "What were our vows?" she asked, but there was no answer. Emily turned to Dr. Harris. "Please let me know when they wake up, especially Ethan. I should be the first face he sees." A week passed since the accident. Emily was in Ethan's hospital room, gazing at the morning sun streaming through the window. Her son was still in a coma, but doctors said there were signs of recovery. Brain wave activity had increased, and occasionally his fingers moved. It was a glimmer of hope. Emily had taken leave from work. Her hospital colleagues were concerned about her and took turns visiting, bringing toys, books, and flowers for Ethan. Rachel was particularly attentive, making sure Emily ate and took breaks. "Get some rest," Rachel said. "I'll be here." Emily smiled with a tired face. "Thank you, but I'm fine. I think I should be the first face he sees when he wakes up." Meanwhile, Michael and Sarah had regained consciousness 3 days earlier. They had been moved to separate rooms, and Emily hadn't tried to see them. However, today she decided for Ethan's sake, she needed to know the truth. "Ethan, Mommy's going out for a bit. I'll be right back." She kissed her son's forehead and left the room. Walking down the hallway, Emily's heart was in turmoil, anger, sadness, and above all, the deep pain of betrayal. However, she tried to maintain her composure as a medical professional, not to be swept away by emotions but to know the facts. In front of Michael's hospital room door, she took a deep breath. After knocking, she entered to find her husband lying in a bed by the window. His face still bore injuries, and his right arm was in a cast. Seeing Emily enter, his eyes widened. "Emily," his voice was weak. In the adjacent bed sat Sarah. The swelling on her face had subsided considerably, but a large bruise remained under her eyes. Seeing Emily, she lowered her gaze. "Why?" Emily asked in a cold voice as soon as she entered the room. Michael and Sarah exchanged glances and shamefully lowered their eyes. "Emily, let me explain," Michael began. "At first, it was just comfort. Sarah was hurt from the divorce." "Comfort?" Emily's voice trembled. "Is having an affair with my sister comfort?" Sarah said through tears. "Sis, I'm so sorry. This wasn't the intention. But when I realized, and my son found out," Emily was shaking with anger. "What did he see? How much do you think he was hurt?" The truth was revealed. A month ago, Ethan had come home early on an early dismissal day from school. As he quietly entered the house, he heard giggling from the kitchen. When he peeked in, he saw his father and aunt embracing and kissing. Ethan froze. His father noticed him and hurriedly tried to explain. "Son, it's grown-up business. Please don't tell Mom." Since then, Ethan had been suffering from confusion and guilt. He loved his mother, but feared that telling the truth would destroy the family. He withdrew, lost his appetite, and couldn't concentrate at school. On the day of the accident, Ethan couldn't bear it anymore and declared to his father and aunt that he would tell Mom everything. A panicked Michael tried to persuade Ethan in the car, and Sarah accompanied them. The heated argument in the car caused the accident. "Because of your selfishness, my son became the victim." Emily choked on the words. "All he wanted was for me to know the truth." Michael wept. "I won't ask for forgiveness." "But Ethan, I never meant to hurt him." "But he was hurt," Emily said coldly. "Because of you two?" Sarah looked up. "Sis, how is Ethan?" "Still in a coma, but the doctors say there are signs of recovery." A tense silence filled the room. "Anything from the police?" Michael fearfully asked. "It's being handled as an accident. Your driving mistake was the cause. Of course, the message on your cell phone is on record." Michael lowered his face. "I've consulted a lawyer. I intend to start divorce proceedings. I'll pay sufficient child support and compensation to you and Ethan." "It's not about money," Emily said quietly. "You betrayed 10 years of marriage and my trust." "Sis," Sarah said in a trembling voice, "we don't intend to continue the relationship. It was a mistake, but we never meant to hurt you." Emily stared at Sarah, the sister she had grown up with since childhood, the sister who had Gabrielle Guthrie to a new life for Ethan and me. She said nothing more and left the room. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath, suppressing her anger and sadness. She returned to Ethan's hospital room. As she entered, doctors were gathered around her son's bed. Emily's heart nearly stopped. "What happened?" she cried. Dr. Harris turned around and, surprisingly, he was smiling. "He's awake, Emily." Emily rushed over. Ethan's eyes were open. He looked weak and confused, but definitely conscious. "Ethan," Emily took her son's hand. "It's Mum. Do you understand?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Mum." His voice was weak. The doctors continued their examinations and eventually left the room. Dr. Harris stayed back last and explained to Emily, "It's miraculous. There's no significant damage to his brain, and he has a good chance of full recovery. Of course, rehabilitation will be necessary, but being young, his recovery should be quick." Emily wept, this time with tears of joy. "Thank you, Doctor." After Dr. Harris left the room, Emily sat beside her son. Ethan looked at his mother and trembled his lips. "Mom, I'm sorry about not telling you about Dad and Aunt Sarah." Emily gently stroked her son's hair. "You did nothing wrong. Instead, I'm sorry you had to carry such a burden alone. But it's okay now. Mom is here. Dad and Aunt Sarah, they're both recovering. But Ethan, life will be a little different from now on. We're going to become a new family." Ethan closed his eyes, understandingly. Though still weak, he firmly gripped his mother's hand. "I want to be with Mum," he said in a small voice. Emily gently embraced her son. "We'll still be a family, Ethan, but in a new form. Let's be strong together." One Sunday morning, a year later, Emily was making pancakes in the kitchen. From the living room came Ethan's laughter. He had fully recovered and was adapting well to life at his new school. Emily felt the sunlight streaming through the window and reflected on the past year. The first few months had been difficult: divorce proceedings, moving, and her son's rehabilitation and counseling. But they were moving forward, little by little. Emily, who had returned to the hospital, now worked shorter hours. She treasured her time with Ethan. "Mom, are David and Lucas coming to the park picnic today?" Ethan came into the kitchen. "Yes, they are," Emily smiled. David Mitchell was a pediatrician she had met at the PTA of Ethan's new school, and he had a 9-year-old son, Lucas. She and David, also raising a child alone, had gradually deepened their friendship. "They're nice," Ethan said frankly. "I got a letter from Dad. Michaels had moved to the West Coast. He was receiving counseling for alcohol dependency and facing his actions. He wrote to Ethan once a month and occasionally called. It would take a long time to repair the father-son relationship, but at least he was trying. Dad says he started volunteer work helping children," Ethan said. Emily nodded. "That's good." As she was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, she found Sarah standing there with a bouquet of flowers. "May I come in?" she asked nervously. Sarah had completed a rehabilitation program and started working as a counselor at a women's support center. She had sent Emily several apologetic letters. 3 months ago, Emily began writing short replies, and last week, they spoke on the phone for the first time. "Ethan, someone's here to see you," Emily called her son. Ethan hesitated at first, but soon rushed to Sarah and lightly hugged her. "How have you been? How's school?" Sarah asked. Emily returned to the kitchen and made coffee. Repairing the sisters' relationship wasn't easy, but at least they were trying. She was surprised at herself. What once seemed unforgivable now seemed possible. It wasn't weakness, but strength. At night, after Ethan was asleep, Emily opened her diary. Today, Sarah came to the house, something I couldn't have imagined a year ago. The wounds haven't completely healed, but we're moving forward. Life sometimes takes unexpected directions, but what matters, I think, is whether you have the courage to stand up after the storm. She looked out the window. A new moon was floating in the sky. The Chicago night was quiet, somehow peaceful. Tomorrow was a new day, and she and Ethan would overcome whatever days might come together. Every ending is also a new beginning. Emily etched this in her heart as she turned off the lights.